Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire. Youth Worker on Fire. Welcome, Youth Worker Nation. Today we got Lenita Abouchabake with us from Sydney, Australia, right? And I have no idea what accent I just had. I something came out, but it's definitely not Australian. So here's what I know you are. You are a youth minister. You're a youth speaker. You are a coach to coach youth pastors or people who are into student ministry and are wanting to work with school systems, work with parents and students. And what I know that people really want to know about that I was very interested in is that you were kickboxing in Bali. And I saw that on, I don't remember if it was Facebook or if it was Instagram. I don't know which one, but that was impressive. That was impressive. So everybody's got to go. Is it Instagram? Is that what it was on? Or is it both?
It was both, but I was on Instagram quite a bit.
Yeah. They've got to go see that because impressive. And the fact that you're in Bali altogether, you know. So you're doing all these things. You got a book that you wrote and that is on the market. And I want you to tell us about that. And right off the bat, tell everyone, because I've learned this in podcasting right up front, we need to know how people can reach you. And so tell us how they can reach you. Tell us about your book. I'm going to ask you some of my questions that I ask everyone that's on my podcast, and then we're going to let you take it away and take us where you want to take us, okay?
Awesome. Sounds good.
So now tell everyone how the different ways that we can reach you.
Of course. So I'm on all social media platforms, of course, like that's a no-brainer. You can connect with me at Lenita Abouchabake. It's such a long last name, so I'm going to link up that for you because I know you're not going to be able to spell that from the get-go. But I'm also I have an online Facebook community group for a lot of youth leaders, youth ministers, pastors, etc., that are wanting to, level up and build a business out of this as well, like really package their pastoral gifts for youth into a youth coaching and speaking business. So I have a youth a Facebook group as well that's called Youth Biz Leaders. That's free, complimentary. Everyone's hanging out there and having a good time. So that is also on offer. And also just with my book, it's called The Youth Biz Secrets as well. And I just basically share with everyone, my top 7 tips on how to transfer those pastoral gifts into a business. What does that look like? Where to start? And really just simplify the basics. Because I know from my experience, I knew I had a gift working with youth and I love working with youth. I started in high schools as a teacher. I also was a youth minister and working in my local church youth group, but I wasn't necessarily paid for what I was doing, only because obviously I loved what I did. I didn't realize I could build a business out of it until I came across a few platforms, and then it started getting interesting. So I've packaged all of my tools and learnings into that book, and I also have that on offer for your audience as well if they're wanting to grab it. And that's what brings me here today, just packaging all of my experience from schools, churches, summer camps, and then just throwing that into what a business could look like for a lot of tremendous youth leaders out there.
And highly needed. Most of us are horrible at the business part. There's a few like you that have thrived there. But most of us, we go in with heart and soul. And I grew up in an entrepreneur family and all that, but I kind of threw it out the window. I was a musician, which is a whole nother story. Then God took me into ministry. So what you're doing is so incredibly needed for youth pastors. They don't know the worth. They don't know what they're worth. And they don't know how to know what they're worth. And that's what you're bringing to the table. That's one thing I'm extremely excited about that you're bringing to people. Because one thing I do emphasize is, hey, find out what you're worth. I've got stung enough times that nobody else has to get stung with that, with people devaluing you. And so we want to keep encouraging, just like you're doing. So I'm absolutely amazed at what we're saying here and what you're talking about and what your book is about. So Anything else you want to tell us before we go on?
Yeah, of course. So you did mention something about like knowing your worth. I think as youth leaders, because we do this, it's community service. We are going in as volunteers in the beginning. We're all about just giving, and I think a lot of people just don't realize the importance of making money in order to grow your ministry even further. And when I raise that awareness for my community, they start to actually understand it. And I can resonate with the fact that in the beginning, I really was terrible at the business end. It wasn't until I learned the business tools that my brand started to grow even further. And we have so many people that are tremendous with kids, but they're playing behind the scenes and no one knows who they are.
Yes.
And I always believe the best never wins, the best known always wins. So I always love to get those epic youth leaders, get them out from behind the scenes, show people what they're actually doing. And then once they generate that attention and they have that confidence within themselves, they can back themselves to say, yep, I can get paid to actually coach a child, or I can get paid to speak in schools and conferences, etc. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, no, that's tremendous, because public school, and I don't know how things are in Sydney, not done my research there. I apologize for that. But the public school system here for years, and I brought speakers like yourself to those schools, and different types of programs and we would only find the best. If we couldn't find the best, we wouldn't take them, because they only want the best. They're going to go to other resources if we don't bring them. And so if we can be the best, your value is beyond. And so what's it like in Australia with that? Is that a great need there? And some of the other countries that you're dealing with, are you finding that?
I am. There's quite a lot of similarities with the educational system. Australia is actually very similar to America as well. And in terms of the well-being and personal development needs of our youth, it's quite universal. The pains and the challenges that young kids are facing, it's definitely the same here. And I find that the educational system, so to speak, it won't evolve in the way that we are hoping as youth leaders. But fortunately enough, our roles as coaches and speakers will never go away, because we're actually the individuals that will be closing those gaps in the system. Will always be needed, because the system's fit. It's fixed for a particular outcome, and then we come in and we just fill in those gaps. So that's what's really exciting about our work, and it's definitely not going to go away for a very long time.
Absolutely, and that is, I don't know where you came from. There's not. Have you found many people like yourself? I know a few, but have you found many that are doing what you're doing and helping other people to do what you're doing?
Not as many. I find like a lot of speakers, but a lot of people, what I really love is I come from a life coaching background for teenagers specifically. Mm-hmm. So I moved from a high school teacher role into life coaching for teenagers, and then I started to speak. So I came across a lot of youth speakers, but a lot of them didn't realize that they actually can become paid coaches as well. And now that I'm talking about it more and getting online and collaborating and traveling, I'm coming across a lot of people who actually work with youth. They just don't tell people that they do. You know, I met an incredible guy in Bali when I was doing Muay Thai, and I'm like, what do you do for work? He goes, oh, I just quit my full-time teaching job because I was burnt out. I said, really? Do you work with kids? He said, yes, I love working with elementary age kids, but I was just not satisfied in the role. And I was like, hold on a second. This resonates with me so much. And they're the type of people that I'm meeting, a lot of burnt out leaders who want to work with kids, but they just find that they're quite stuck in an outdated system.
Right, which is frustrating, which is what burns them out. Working with the students does not burn them out. It's the systems that they're working in that are confining them. So that's what I hear you saying. Let's go back now a little bit, though. You know, that's kind of caught us up to date with where you are right now. And it's also told me that, and this is very incredible, because when you're working in a public school system, in fact, I ran from teaching. I did everything I could to make sure I did not work in a school system. And first it was through music, and I wanted to entertain. And so recording industry, the whole bit. And then God had another plan. So after I was on the road a while, but I did not. And I had teaching offers, and I kept trying to go back running from God, actually with some things going, okay, I'll just go there, you know. But every time that would, I'd go through the educational system and never get in. I'd never finish the core studies, but, I did after my undergrad work. So when you're doing this is amazing because number one, you understand a lot of things that most youth pastors, youth ministers don't understand about working with students, working with families, working with the public, knowing your value. You were learning all that stuff and learning your D-value in the school system as well. And then now you're transforming. Going from that to this is actually a better process to me. And I didn't do that, but what happened was I worked with Youth for Christ and they basically just beat me up.
Yeah.
And our thing was we became community leaders. We had to learn how to, and all that education that I took in the educational system, I used with my principals, my teachers, the school system. So I learned on the back door what you learned, can't even speak today, through the front door. And so tell me your hardest. Adolescence is my focus because adolescence is 11 to 25 years of age for males on the average. And then my wife would say I'm still an adolescent. But anyway, and then from 11 to 22 on the average for gals, right? And so in your adolescent years yourself, what was your hardest time? What was that people relate with our pains and our struggles more than they do with our successes? So we start there. So tell me your toughest time as an adolescent.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love this question because as you just mentioned, we do connect to, the imperfections which make us perfect in other people's eyes. And for me, the challenge that I faced as a teenager was understanding whether I was enough or not. And I always felt like there was something missing in my life because of certain experiences and setbacks that I was faced with at that time. I grew up with divorced parents, and so I didn't have a father growing up. And, along the way, I always used to question why he didn't want to be in my life and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I also, I felt like if I wasn't performing academically or athletically, I wasn't really seen in the educational system as a child. I excelled academically and I pushed myself athletically to be noticed. But I think I pushed myself for the wrong reason because I just wanted to be acknowledged. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to feel like I was enough. And when I learned that I was actually enough, and that's through my own faith as well, that really helped me. I teach a lot of teenagers now that, you are enough and everything else you achieve here moving forward is an absolute bonus. And, if you bomb out in some aspects or if you don't do well on a test paper, it's not a reflection of who you are as a person. It just might be a reflection of the habits or the systems that you have in place. And that's for me, that was just the biggest challenge.
Now, I don't know where you got this, that you were enough thing. There's a psychologist out of England. Hey, do you know about this lady? That she basically rejected everything she was taught in psychology, even while she was going through it. And she based her whole psychological field on the premise that you are enough.
Oh, I have come across psychologist, but I don't remember her name.
I will find that out and I'll send it to you because I can't remember. I used it actually with some college students and let them hear. She's a secular therapist, but she kept people from suicide, people that were unhelpable, that people were through, and Hollywood called her. And all in that one statement that you're saying, that she would say, she'd listen to him and she says, I know what your problem is. She said this to an actor. It was very, very difficult, mean guy. And he said, and everybody wondered, don't even drive up in a Mustang if it's not a Maserati or it's not some really expensive car. He is going to just chew you out. She got a Mustang, drove it right up to his front door. And so he started doing his thing.
I like her already. She sounds funny.
Yeah, she is. And so, he started telling her about his wives and all this. He always married models, et cetera. He had multiple wives that he had divorced. And she says, oh, I know what your problem is. And he just stopped and he said, you do? Because nobody else could help him. And she says, yeah, I know what your problem is. He says, well, what is it? She says, you don't think you're enough.
Wow.
And took him through the process, and he was a changed man. She did the same thing with suicide patients, that sort of thing. And
wow.
Psychologists were amazed and going, what? We spent years and couldn't get through. And you're telling, so what you're saying here is just amazing to me that you've come across this without hearing this phrase, that it's about being enough.
And that's why I think faith is really important, like spirituality in general, like I come from a Christian family. I was raised and I practice my faith, but a lot of the kids that don't connect to God yet because it's quite forced on them at such a young age, I try to help them understand that phrase and then eventually, really connect that to the faith, which is really, really important. But yeah, I just try to plant those seeds as early as possible, and little hacks that I teach kids, like my coaching, the teenagers that I coach, is I change my alarm code. So instead of it saying alarm when it goes off in the morning, I change it to saying I am enough. And that's the first message.
I mean, you are so parallel with this lady. What she did for this guy, she took his ex-wife's lipsticks, they were everywhere, and she wrote on the mirrors throughout his house, "You are enough."
Wow.
Or say, she wrote, "I am enough." She said, "I want you to look at the mirror. I want you to say that every day. I am enough." And, transforming. Wow. She did that to other people.
And it's like a muscle. You just need to train it. At first, it seems very awkward and quite strange.
Yes.
But eventually it will, the more you say it to yourself, the more, you are accepting of that as well.
Well, even we as Christians struggle with that. And as youth leaders, as youth workers, we're struggling with that. And if we're struggling with that, how much more are these students? I mean, it's amazing what you're doing.
I think as well, when we feature our imperfections in our movement and ministry, kids will connect to that so much more than us trying to just teach the faith. And when you showcase the struggles, when you show them specifically what you're trying to embed into your spirituality and into your everyday life, it'll resonate with them so much more. And especially when you give them practical tools to apply, that's the biggest difference here. You got to give them practical action steps on how they can embed the faith into their life. If it's the sign of the cross before a meal, or if it's a gratitude list, or give them ways on how to apply the content, because there's just a massive disconnect with what kids are learning and what they're actually applying in everyday life.
Yeah. And so give me your worst ministry moment, whether it was teaching or ministry moment, to whether it was in a public school system or whether it was in your coaching. Yeah. What was that one thing that you can tell? There's some things that we can't tell, but if there's something that we can tell that was your worst moment, tell me what that is.
I think there wasn't like a really, really bad dramatic moment. I think it was just like increments of, like, it was specific moments that have kind of bundled all together, and eventually it really took a toll on me as an educator, was the fact that I didn't have support from colleagues due to the fact that I actually had tremendous rapport with kids. So what makes me thrive as a youth coach and a speaker is not actually celebrated in the educational system. So me being very open and laid back in my teaching style, me being very hands-on with families, me being quite affectionate in terms of telling kids how much I care about them, kids wanting to shake my hand, young females wanting to come up and hug me, kids screaming out of joy the fact that they had me for their class. These are little things that mean so much to me and the kids and the families that I serve, but I just wasn't accepted as a school teacher because it was just frowned upon for some reason. Maybe it was out of envy or jealousy, or maybe because I was just so different, but I really just was never able to connect with the procedures in schools because I always put human connections first over outcomes. And that got me into trouble sometimes.
Oh, yes.
But I know I'm not the only one. I come across a lot of educators now that are in the same position, and they get heavily criticized and bullied by colleagues, whether that's in churches or in schools, because of their approach, their teaching style. But when you put human connections first, you're always going to be a little bit more controversial because you're talking to humans here. You're not just teaching from a book.
Yes, yeah.
So I think over time it was just a gradual, it just took a toll gradually on me because I didn't have that support. from people who should have had my back at that time.
Yes, and that happens in churches as well as it does in school systems, doesn't it?
Yeah.
First, tell me about your best adolescent moment. Can you think of one particular one? Anywhere from middle school, high school, college, or 11 to...
One great moment. Oh, I'm quite lucky that I've had a lot of good moments as a child. I've been raised really well, considering a few setbacks. I think for me, it was, I think when I graduated high school and I received my scores for the exams, I set a really big goal to obviously do really well and go to university. And I was fortunate enough to get into the university that I wanted to go to. And it was actually allowed me to become the first person in my family to go to university. So that was a really big milestone for me. That was something that I really wanted to show my mother as well, how much she invested in me. And graduating from university was that second moment as well, having my mother and my grandmother there. That was just a beautiful moment for them. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones that want the photos and they want to hang the certificate.
Oh, yes.
It's more for them really than it was me. But that was just like a big, thank you, and just showing them like your hard work paid off. Raising kids on your own is never easy. So yeah, that was a big moment for me, graduating high school and getting into university. And
because your dad, you alluded to this before, but he was no longer in the picture. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes. So from 3 months of age, that decision was made, and then took off, and then from 8 years of age, up until 8 years of age, it was on and off. And then my mum's been a sole parent my entire life, basically. And I didn't have a relationship with my dad. So when I speak to kids and coach kids, I always come from a very family orientated approach, because I always want to make sure kids feel so loved in my presence, because I know the feeling of missing out on an adult that should have had me around.
Yes.
So I always wanted to, when kids leave my presence, they would never have that feeling at all in their own life.
So tell me about how you accepted Christ, or how Christ came to your life. You brought up in the church, I'm guessing, is the way it sounds. But how did you get that personal relationship with God through Jesus? What happened there?
For me, I really had to work on my personal relationship with him. I got caught up in trying to go to church and trying to pray and trying to go to confession, but I felt like it was quite forced and I didn't really understand the Mass. So for me, I actually had to start reading books and learning off like motivational mentors who are faith-based. For me, that was the approach that really helped, and gaining that inspiration, I started reading more books. I started praying the rosary every day. And then when I started understanding the Mass, that's when I went back to church. And then it was just a whole different experience for me. One big thing was accountability. I started volunteering in church. I became a reader and a Eucharistic minister. And that was a big thing for me. I had to make sure that I was showing up for myself personally in order for me to go up and read. I didn't want to really fake that. So in the beginning, it was a lot of just investing in my spiritual development, praying the rosary, falling in love more with Jesus first before I just sat in a church and tried to understand Mass. And that's how it began. And then fortunately enough, I inspired some family members to come back to the church as well. And that was quite good.
Yeah.
And I never looked back. So I'm still involved in my church. I still read and do the Eucharist and help out wherever I can. And I'm absolutely blessed that I get that opportunity as well to mingle with the parishioners too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So, and you're doing personal coaching with students, but now you're also doing personal coaching with youth workers and youth ministers. Tell me how that has gone. Tell me how long you've been doing that. And then give me some of your reward stories to where you've seen some real development.
Yeah, definitely. So what I do with youth ministers, youth leaders, etc., is I basically help them establish a youth coaching and speaking business from the ground level up. So it's very much for beginners. It's very much for the amazing youth leader that is playing behind the scenes, the unsung hero that no one knows about, that is incredible.
Yes.
And I basically take them through how I built my coaching business and how I get into schools to speak. The biggest reward for me is obviously I teach them how to make an income, and I show them how to build the marketing and all the fancy stuff online. But the biggest reward for me is witnessing their mindset shift when they realize, when they start to own who they are as a youth leader, when they start to own their pastoral gifts, and that transformation when it comes to their lifestyle and their finances. They really start to understand, I could build a lifestyle on my terms. I could build a business where I could be making a good income so I can serve my family, or I can give back to my church. And that's what's the biggest reward here. We're great with kids. We do phenomenal work, but we also have to make sure we're taking care of our end as well. And we can do this remotely. So as you know, I was in Bali recently, yes, but I was still coaching kids and I was still coaching online. So this is a lifestyle business, because I know, having that teacher cap on, I was very burnt out as a school teacher, and I wanted to make sure that I could build a lifestyle business out of that. So I take them through that step-by-step business coaching process and I help them build it from the ground up, based on their passion for kids, their personality, their lifestyle and financial goals. So it's a very much customized one-to-one program with me.
So tell me also about your countries. You said that you're not only in Australia, where else are you mentoring people?
I have mentees in America. I also have in Europe, the Middle East as well. Predominantly America, because this is people resonate with this quite well in America. It's quite fresh in Australia still, yes, coaching and speaking. But usually the majority are from the Americans and Aussies. That's the majority of my clients at the moment. Yeah. But my actual online community is from Greece. We have Africa, Europe, where else? Indonesia. We have so many random countries in there, because there are incredible youth workers all over the world, really. So we're just all coming together here. Canada as well, and India. So we have, incredible youth leaders coming from just all walks of life, which is so phenomenal to us.
Yes, it is. Yes, and that is phenomenal. Everybody doesn't have that kind of following. Everybody doesn't have that many countries. In fact, they don't even think on that level. They think they can barely think beyond the town that they're in. If you run into that at all?
Oh, it's definitely.
So what happens when one of them gets it, that they're more than, we obviously want to be focused on the place that we live. That should be our first love and first, but to expand our minds and our spirit, that Jesus said to not only at home, and Samaria, as the scripture says, or the surrounding areas, but to the rest of the world, he said as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so have you seen the light bulb come on with some of them, and you went, oh, just all of a sudden they went, now I get it?
Definitely. So, I think it was St. Paul who said this, where he said, go to fresh soil. You want to go and serve on fresh soil. And because sometimes you can't be a prophet in your own land as well. Sometimes it's quite hard to build this movement when you're coming from a different playground.
Yes.
But I had that shift within myself. I noticed that I could be doing this well beyond my local suburb and my local town. And then when I share that with youth leaders, they don't really believe it until I actually show them that I'm doing that. So it's all about show me, don't just tell me. So right. I always make sure when I'm teaching and coaching, I'm coming from a very, very authentic place. I show them, how I'm doing this with kids, where I'm doing it in the world, documenting my journey so they can see it's actually real. Because there's a lot of people online that can just tell you nice things and give you the shiny objects, and you'll be like, oh wow, it seems too good to be true, but it's probably because it is. But when I actually, just showcase that, they really open up their mind. It's like the same reaction. Where has this been this whole time? Like, I really want to get into this and actually learn it. So very early days, very fresh platform, but it's just planting those seeds and that awareness for a lot of us, and myself too. Like I'm forever a student as well. So I'm learning along the way too, and just packaging that even further into my programs and my videos.
Yeah. When we teach, we learn more than the people we teach. It's just the way teaching works. And that's, I can imagine that you keep learning and teaching and growing and expanding. So what's your latest venture? What's beyond like what we've talked about? What are some things that you're thinking, God, I really want to do this?
I'm loving these questions. I feed off this energy so much. For me, it's creating the awareness around how phenomenal youth leaders are, in all different roles. The people who work with children are very much underestimated, and I don't think they're given enough credit, especially in a society where, it's not the highest paying jobs on the market, especially like I know in Australia, it's definitely not. And it's not as well respected as well. So my vision for this movement that I'm building is to really build a global community, and traveling to different countries and training up phenomenal youth leaders, teaching them how to build their youth movements in their own country or suburbs or wherever they are. Because my dream is obviously to empower so many children, but I can't do that on my own. So I really want to build a global community, and that will involve, going on global speaking tours, building these workshops and these events for youth leaders and training them up so then they can actually go and plant the seeds in their community. And yeah, that's what's exciting me, because I know that's such on just a larger scale, traveling and speaking and doing this world tour. But it's that youth leader movement that I really want to just be building and raising that awareness around how important our youth are. We can't forget about the kids, and it starts with us, really.
Well, that's great. And you know what? I believe you'll do that. That's where your desire is. That's where your heart is. And Ephesians 3:20, this is a verse that just, you read the Bible, you teach for a long time, but then it's like it's all of a sudden one day, certain verses that you've read 100 times, 1,000 times, all of a sudden become alive. And that verse for me is this, and I'll pass it on to you. And that is, God is able to give us immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine in Christ Jesus. Immeasurably more is the key. More. We want one thing, and I tell students, I tell youth leaders like yourself, you cannot dream too big, but you can dream too small. Because God, as large as you can dream, God is far bigger. And when you walk toward God, He runs toward you.
Yeah.
And so he is that Father that you didn't have, but that's my prayer for you, is that God keeps give you visions, and that He keeps giving you more than you envisioned, so that you can keep growing, keep expanding, and keep helping others. The goal is heaven. We'll be there. We'll be there with God. We'll be there with those that we bring with us. There's some people that you're probably aware of. Louis Giglio. I don't know if you've ever heard of Louis, or the Passion Project, the Passion Conference, one of the largest conferences for college students in the world. Happens once a year. But those are the sort of people that you need to engage more with as well, because they have already paved the way. They're dreaming big dreams, not for the sake of dreaming them, but for the passion of students and of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And they're there to encourage people like you that are encouraging people.
I love it.
There's several of those there. But let me tell you what, I believe that you have the passion to be as big as any of those. And they're not big because they decided they wanted to be this massive conference person. They became that because of exactly what you're saying. Before you knew about it, God is putting this in you, just like you are enough. Mm-hmm. When we listen to God, He reveals to us the secrets that only He can reveal to us. And I believe that's what He's doing with you. And so they do this because they're passionate about students. They want to see them dream and know that they are more now, not just more later.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Well, tell me what else you want to tell us about you, about Connection. Let's say it one more time. Tell us the name of your book again. We're going to do this at the end here, how we can get in touch with you again. And then give us any other thoughts that you have that you would like to share that you just don't get to share anywhere else.
Of course. So my book is called The Youth Biz Secrets, and we'll definitely link that up with the audience to grab a copy. I think the biggest thing for me is, you can't really expect people to understand the way you do things because God just didn't give them the same vision. So the way I do my youth work, I always used to think, why can't people understand why I want to do this for the kids? It's just they had a completely different vision for youth than I did. And I just had to make sure that I had to come from a place of understanding and love rather than feeling rejected or feeling hatred towards those people. And I feel like, if you have that burning desire to work with kids, don't give up on that because you might have been burnt out in a particular job, in the past, or maybe you're burning out at the moment. You really need to just stick at it and believe in yourself to be building this movement. And it can be whether it's in an existing system or you can build it completely independent of the schools or the churches. It really does depend on how much you want to do and how much you want to back yourself. And I'm always all about building it independently and then going back and serving those movements. As I do, I go back into churches and schools and I still do my work over there. But yeah, don't expect people to understand your grind. God just did not give them the same vision as you. And that's one of my favorite quotes that I always love to just reflect on for us youth leaders and what we do with kids.
Yes, that's right. Listen, you're bringing a great value to this world, Lenita. And thank you for reaching out to me.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And obviously you got to hear at least one podcast somewhere along the way. How did you connect with Youth Worker on Fire?
So I was just doing a bit of research online, to be honest. I typed in, it was like literally, I think it was youth leader podcasts. I really wanted to just connect with youth leaders and I wanted to just expand my network because I know how refreshing it is to start talking about kids with another youth leader. It's like we just feel so connected already. And I did a Google search and I think, congratulations. I think you were like one of the top 5 podcasts up there. And so I was like, I'm going to see. And some people I've reached out to some and others haven't responded. And then obviously, fortunately enough, you responded. And I was like, this is incredible. I'd love to connect. And that's basically how it happened, just through a wonderful Google search.
Well, right. And then it's amazing what is available to us in this time in our world. I mean, we're talking right now. And I'm in Florida. And by the way, it's cold in Florida today. I mean, for us, it's cold.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's my
but cold for us is like, 60 degrees. But I mean, if it gets down to like 30s, we've actually seen snowflakes here, but it's so short. I mean, it's like we're cold for maybe a week or two and then it's all hot again. I mean, it was 80s in the last few days. What's the weather like right there in Sydney right now?
So it's summer over here. So this is our warm part of the year. We have a summer Christmas, not a white Christmas, which is interesting.
Yes.
It is about 25. So we're in degrees. So I don't know what that would be in Fahrenheit, but that's 25 degrees. The sun's out. It's quite warm. Yeah, we did have a bit of a hot season. I'm not sure if you heard about the bushfires and all that went on during the Christmas New Year period in Australia, but we did have quite a hot summer with a lot of fires. But yeah, it gets quite hot at this time of year and it'll soon get a little bit cooler in April, May.
Yeah. So Santa and his reindeers had to wear shorts and cool down.
Santa comes on a surfboard and we have barbecue at the beach and that's how we do it over here.
That's right. We're almost there. We get a little bit cool here. We're the other side of the equator, of course. And so, listen, you love Sydney, though? You love Sydney? You don't want to move anytime? You're thinking you're going to stay there most of your life?
Oh, look, I'm always open about moving. I'm not someone that would stay in the same place my whole life. Like as I mentioned, Florida is my favorite state in America. If I was to live in America, I'd be living in Florida.
Well, Florida is one of the best places actually you could live, right?
Yeah, yes. I love the people, the lifestyle. So that's my type of vibe that I really like. But yeah, I'm all about, I can get up and go. And that's kind of why I built this type of business, because when I'm a mum with kids one day, I can be working remotely, or if I want to be traveling the world, or if I need to move and support my husband with his work, I can do that, you know. So I just really wanted to have a long-term vision with my youth work as well. And yeah, I think just any type of warm place that I could enjoy the beach and a lifestyle, that's my type of place to live. So, but Australia is beautiful. Like we have a wonderful lifestyle over here as well. So who knows? Maybe I'll move on to the other side of the country, over to Western Australia. The coast is beautiful over there.
Yeah, well, I hear great things about Australia. So not been there yet, but I hear great things. And so now you said your husband. Now, are you married now?
Oh no! So this is long term. So I'm not married.
When you get him, when you see him, are you dating anyone? That's what. Or do you have a husband in mind? Not yet, huh?
Not at the moment. Yeah.
Well, after this, you might have some other countries, wanting to know, guys who want to know if they can take you out. So, or tell them they come down for the Barbie, right? All right, Lenita, listen, I am so thankful. And listen, we will hopefully do this again. And because there will be more happening in your life. I want to hear more about what happens at another time with students that you're teaching that they are enough, and youth pastors, youth workers, that they're enough. That's what Jesus teaches, that we're enough in him, and that he's created us from our mother's womb. He saw us. He knew us. He saw us being formed. How awesome to realize that he thinks we're enough as well. Once again, thank you so much. You're very pleasant to be with and talk to. I can see why you're a communicator. And I don't know if you saw it. I actually liked tonight, in between places that I had to be today and tonight, I liked a few of your sessions where you were training or you're teaching. So when you go back and you look at, I think it was primarily all Instagram tonight's what I looked at. And so, but you teach well. I mean, everybody cannot do it.
Thank you.
But a lot of people can learn to do it, and a lot of people don't know they can do it, and that's what you're about.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot to me.
Okay, Lenita, God bless. And Youth Worker on Fire, this is Lenita, and she can be found at all those places. Look her up on social media, hire her out, get her book. All right, Lenita, God bless. We'll see you later.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.